For 40 years, my husband and I dreamed about retirement. We planned road trips, family visits, and quiet mornings drinking coffee together. Then, just 1 year after retirement began, a single phone call from the hospital changed the future we had spent decades building.
Welcome back to God Showed Up Stories. Tonight's story is for anyone whose life didn't go according to plan. Anyone who worked hard, did everything right, and still found themselves facing a future they never expected. Maybe you've experienced illness. Maybe you've become a caregiver. Maybe you've watched a dream disappear. Or maybe you've found yourself grieving a life you thought you were going to have. If you've ever asked God why things unfolded differently than you hoped. If you've ever struggled to find purpose after unexpected loss. If you've ever wondered whether joy can still exist after disappointment. This story is for you. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who may need encouragement tonight. And comment below. Have you ever had to let go of a dream and embrace a different future? Never forget this. Sometimes life changes the plan. But God never stops working within the story. All right, let's get into tonight's story.
For most of our marriage, retirement felt like a distant dream, something we talked about during long work days, something we planned for during late-night conversations, something that kept us motivated through decades of responsibility. My husband and I worked hard, very hard. We raised children, paid bills, saved carefully, made sacrifices. Like so many couples, we told ourselves that one day, all the hard work would pay off. One day we'd finally have time for each other, time for family, time for the adventures we'd postponed for years. We talked constantly about what retirement would look like, road trips across the country, visiting grandchildren whenever we wanted, trying new hobbies, exploring small towns, sleeping in, drinking coffee together on quiet mornings without worrying about schedules. The picture felt so clear, so certain. Then retirement finally arrived, and for a little while, it was everything we imagined. The alarm clocks disappeared. The stress faded. We spent afternoons together, took small trips, enjoyed simple moments we had waited years to experience. For the first time in decades, life felt slower, lighter. We believed the hardest parts of life were behind us. Then, everything changed. It happened on an ordinary morning, a morning that began like countless others. By that evening, we were sitting in a hospital room listening to doctors explain that my husband had suffered a serious stroke. The words barely felt real. I remember hearing them, but not fully understanding them. Because how could this be happening? We had finally made it. We had finally reached the chapter we'd worked so hard for. This wasn't part of the plan. The days that followed were a blur. Hospitals, tests, doctors, therapy, fear. My husband survived. For that, I was incredibly grateful. But recovery was far from simple. The man who had always been strong and independent suddenly needed help with things neither of us ever imagined. Simple tasks became difficult. Routine activities became exhausting. Progress came slowly, painfully slowly. And although he rarely said it out loud, I could see the frustration in his eyes, the embarrassment, the grief, the loss. He had spent his entire life taking care of others. Now he found himself needing help. Meanwhile, my life changed too, almost overnight. Without realizing it, I stepped into a role I never expected, caregiver. The word felt strange at first, then overwhelming. Because caregiving wasn't just helping occasionally. It became woven into every part of daily life. Appointments, medication schedules, therapy sessions, transportation, encouragement, problem solving, worry, constant worry. I loved my husband deeply. Helping him wasn't the problem. The problem was the grief I didn't know how to talk about. The grief of losing the future we thought we were going to have. The road trips, the adventures, the freedom, the plans. They seemed to disappear overnight. And sometimes I felt guilty for grieving them. After all, my husband was still here. Yet part of me mourned the life we had expected. Meanwhile, he was fighting battles of his own. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, he finally admitted something. "I hate needing help." His voice broke slightly when he said it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked away. "I feel like I'm becoming a burden." Hearing those words hurt, because nothing could have been further from the truth. Yet I understood why he felt that way. The stroke had changed so much. Neither of us knew how to navigate this new reality. And if I'm honest, there were moments when both of us quietly asked the same question. Why? Why now? Why after all these years? Why after everything we had worked for? Months later, during one of his rehabilitation appointments, something unexpected happened. While sitting in the waiting area, we met another couple. They looked to be a little older than us, friendly, relaxed, comfortable with each other in a way that immediately stood out. At first, it was just casual conversation, comments about appointments, recovery, the weather, normal small talk. But gradually, the conversation deepened. And as they shared pieces of their story, we realized something remarkable. They had walked a very similar road. Years earlier, the husband had experienced a major health crisis that completely changed their retirement plans. The dreams they had built for decades suddenly disappeared. The wife became a caregiver. The husband struggled with independence. The future they expected never arrived. Yet as they talked, there was something different about them. Peace. Not perfect happiness. Not easy answers. Just peace. And I found myself wondering how they had found it. Little did I know, that conversation would become one of the most important moments in our entire journey.